Welcome back to the Counselor HQ podcast. I'm your host, Noelle, licensed counselor, former school counselor, and founder of Counselor HQ. Today, we're talking about something that sits at the heart of this profession, empathy. Counselors, we're often deeply empathic people. We notice shifts in tone, we pick up on emotional energy, we hold space for pain, grief, fear, trauma, and uncertainty every single day. As counselors, empathy is one of our greatest strengths. But if we're not careful, it can also become one of the biggest reasons we burn out. So today we're talking about how to balance empathy and self-preservation in both clinical and school settings. Because caring deeply about people should not require losing yourself in the process. I was very recently back in my hometown. I hadn't been in a very long time. I went back to present a workshop on self-worth at the Illinois State Board of Education Wellness Conference. I do this work to help others, right? To help educators learn how to best help students. But while doing this work, being back in my hometown, it brought up so many emotions for me, and I really wasn't ready for that. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit here today. So empathy, you probably already know this, is what helps people feel seen, understood, safe, connected. It allows counselors to build trust and meaningful therapeutic relationships. But many counselors accidentally move from empathy into over-identification. And there's a difference. Empathy says, I understand your pain. Over-identification says, I'm carrying your pain. One creates connection, the other creates emotional depletion. And the tricky part is that many counselors were praised throughout their lives for being the helper, the listener, the emotionally aware one, the one that carries other people's emotions. So overextending ourselves can start to feel normal, maybe even noble. But sustainable counseling requires emotional boundaries, not emotional shutdown. Emotional overload doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like replaying sessions at night, feeling emotionally numb after a long day, taking client struggles home mentally, becoming irritable or overstimulated, struggling to turn off that counselor mode. For school counselors, it might look like worrying about students over the weekend, carrying concerns about unsafe home situations, feeling responsible for everyone in the building. For clinical therapists, it might look something like emotional fatigue after trauma work, compassion fatigue, blurred emotional boundaries with clients. And often counselors don't recognize these signs until they're already overwhelmed, because helping professionals are very good at functioning while exhausted. So there's an unspoken message, a myth almost, in helping professions, that the best counselors are the ones who give endlessly. But constantly overextending yourself doesn't make you more effective. It usually makes you emotionally flooded, less present, more reactive, and eventually burned out. Self-preservation is not selfishness, it's sustainability. And sustainable counselors help more people over the long term. So let's talk about realistic ways to care deeply without emotionally drowning in your own work. So the first thing to do is remember what belongs to you. This is huge. A client's emotions are real and important, but they are not yours to carry after the session ends. Your role is to support, guide, regulate, empower, not absorb. I think this is especially important for grad students and new counselors, because I think that line can get blurred very easily in the beginning. Sometimes counselors unconsciously believe, if I stop thinking about it, I don't care enough. But constant mental carrying is not the same thing as effective care. Learn how to turn that off. Which brings me to the second tip. Create transition rituals. I've talked about this before in a previous episode. Your nervous system needs help shifting out of that counselor mode. That might look like listening to your favorite music or podcast on the drive home, changing your clothes after work, taking a short walk, sitting quietly in your car for a couple minutes before you go inside, giving your brain that transition that it needs. So, small rituals create psychological separation between work and home. The next one, you need to limit your emotional leakage. I don't like that word. Not every emotionally heavy conversation needs to continue in your mind all evening. When you start to notice yourself replaying something, gently ask, is this reflection or rumination? Right? Reflection helps growth. Rumination drains our energy. The fourth one, I always talk about this. Counselors need support. Build a support system. Peer consultation, supervision, friendships with other counselors, professional communities. These matter so much because they remind you that you're not alone. Your reactions are normal. You don't have to carry everything silently on your own. This is honestly one of the biggest reasons I'm so passionate about Counselor HQ and building community spaces for counselors. The fifth one is to protect your identity outside of counseling, right? Counseling is your job. It is not who you are. It's part of who you are, but it is not the only thing. You are not only a counselor. You are also a human being, a friend, a partner, a parent, a daughter, a son, a person with interests and needs. You are a person with your own needs. One of the healthiest things counselors can do is maintain parts of themselves that have nothing to do with helping others, because your entire identity cannot survive being built only around emotional caregiving. If you're a caregiver at work and you're a caregiver at home, find something for yourself that brings you joy, that does not require you emotionally caring for anyone else. For school counselors specifically, school counselors carry a unique emotional load because you often see students every single day. You're watching kids struggle over time. You build those strong relationships, and sometimes you feel helpless when the systems that you're working in don't provide enough support. But remember, you are one supportive adult in a student's life. You are not their entire support system. You can make a meaningful impact without carrying full responsibility for every outcome, and that distinction matters. Now, for clinical counselors, therapists and clinical counselors often experience emotional intensity in a different way. They're doing trauma work, crisis work, and highly emotional attunement can create compassion fatigue slowly over time. So ask yourself regularly, what am I carrying right now? What do I need to process? And what supports do I need? Self-awareness is part of ethical practice. If you take one thing from today's episode, let it be this. Empathy is powerful. We know that. But empathy without boundaries becomes exhaustion. You're allowed to care deeply and protect yourself deeply at the same time. The goal here is not to care less. The goal here is to care sustainably. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the space that you hold for others. And thank you for remembering that you deserve support too. I will see you next time.